Just Baseball Show is live wherever you get your podcasts, whether that's Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whether you watch on YouTube, or you're with us on Sports Grid. Jack McMullen, Peter Apple, we're walking you through the best moments of the 2025 MLB postseason. There were so many moments, spoiler alert, a lot of them had to do with the Dodgers and the Blue Jays, but that kind of makes sense when you look at the course of an MLB postseason. There were some moments for the Brewers, there were some moments for the Mariners and the Tigers, but really this is a Dodger and Blue Jay centered episode with a look on the October that was. I'm really excited for this one, man.
I am too, and I don't think we're doing the episode itself a service by saying that it's Blue Jays and Dodgers focused, because I have best moments of the LCS, of the DS, of the wild card, and I tried not to focus on the Blue Jays and Dodgers. So the front half of this episode is definitely going to be focused on those two teams, but we're also going to be highlighting players from all the teams who made the postseason outside of really kind of the Reds, who unfortunately didn't have a lot of good postseason moments, getting destroyed in the wild card series, but everybody else is represented in this episode.
Who we brought to you by?
BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Remember, folks, download BetMGM, whether that be on iOS or Android, and use promo code JUSTBASEBALL. Why? First bet offer up to $1,500 back in bonus bets if your first wager loses. Just remember, gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. Must be 21 years or older. Terms and conditions apply.
We're not going to waste any time. We're just going to get started with the best moments and the best performances of the Dodger postseason, and that culminated in them winning back-to-back World Series championships. It's their third in 6 years. They won in 20 in the COVID-shortened year. They won in 24, and here they are winning in 25. And the parade happened on Monday in LA at Dodger Stadium. It makes a lot of sense that the parade would culminate at Dodger Stadium. It's like your opportunity to sell more concessions and parking, which is just perfect. Although when you have an event like, I remember the Cubs in 2016, they had it in Millennium Park in Chicago, and you had to do that because it was like a top 10 gathering of people in the history of humanity. So I understand why you pivot from Wrigley, but for a team like the Dodgers, it makes a lot of sense. But you have the best performers and performances. I have the biggest moments. We'll start with, I don't know, like this is almost like a Jackson Pollock painting. We can go wherever we want here, but you start with your first best performer, and I'll tell you if I have a moment that fits that performer's kind of October in general.
Well, I assume you will, because this man, Yoshinobu Yamamoto, won the World Series MVP, but he was just fantastic for the entire postseason. 37 innings, 6 earned runs. That's a 1.45 ERA. He went 5-1, led the postseason in wins. He had 2 complete games. First pitcher since Randy Johnson to start Game 6 and then come in relief Game 7. I'll let you talk about that because I assume that's one of your big moments. He became the 5th pitcher in MLB history with an ERA below 2.20 and a WHIP, walks, hits per innings pitched, in a single postseason, joining Randy Johnson, Curt Schilling, Josh Beckett, and Madison Bumgarner. He is worth every penny of that $325 million contract.
And we learned that he is ready to rise to any occasion. And we knew that he could do that in the World Baseball Classic in 2023, but we have learned that stateside in 24 and 25. This guy is amazing. I had Game 7 written down. His sheer appearance in Game 7 was a humongous moment in the Dodger postseason story. You mentioned first guy since Randy Johnson to start Game 6 and appear in Game 7. The other one I had, first guy since Curt Schilling in the early 2000s to throw back-to-back complete games. That happened in the CS and in the World Series. Yoshinobu Yamamoto met the moment. And it's funny, the Dodgers put out a pregame kind of hype up video ahead of his CS start against the Brewers. And it was Yamamoto voicing it over. And he said, I learned a lot from my, DS start against the Phillies. Losing is not an option, was his quote. And he proceeds to go back-to-back complete game wins. And I just thought that was, in hindsight, the coldest thing he could have possibly said in that moment, because he's like 5'10" and he wears a baggy long sleeve undershirt. He doesn't look intimidating, and then all of a sudden he kills you. And I love that about Yoshinobu Yamamoto. So understandably so, that guy has a huge moment and he's a huge performer. I'm going to take you to a moment and you're going to tell me how that guy performed over the course of this, because I bet you have this guy as well. When we learned that Roki Sasaki could throw a high leverage inning, that was everything for the Dodgers. And we learned that sort of kind of in the wild card series against the Reds, but we really learned that in the DS against the Philadelphia Phillies, where this guy recorded a save. And when Roki Sasaki recorded his first save in the month of October, I thought that was the thing that clicked the Dodgers into high gear.
The Dodgers had a lot of great performers, and I actually didn't write Roki Sasaki's name down, but I can give you the numbers. In 10 2/3, recorded 3 saves, put up a 0.84 ERA. And we have to remember Roki's story a little bit. Comes over, one of the most hyped prospects to ever come stateside, and struggles. And there was a very viral moment of him in tears on the outskirts of the dugout. And he got clowned. And then he went down to the minor leagues. And a lot of people, including us, said, it's probably it for him this season. We'll get back in the offseason and he'll come out firing. We didn't doubt him long term. We doubted him this year. How could you not? Look at the numbers.
Yeah.
And then what does he do? Comes back as a reliever and is a godsend for this Dodgers team, whose Achilles heel was their bullpen. And he came and he performed and he quieted all the doubters, including us. Let's get to my next postseason performer. This one's rather easy. Pretty easy. Shohei Ohtani. In the postseason, /265, 405, 691 with 8 home runs and 14 RBIs in 17 games, tying the record for most home runs in a postseason. He became the 4th player ever with multiple 50-plus home run seasons and 2+ World Series rings, joining the greats, Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle, and Jimmy Fox. And I assume, I don't want to steal your moment here, should we talk about the greatest game ever played? Except maybe Rick Wise back in the 70s. 2 home runs and threw a no-hitter. It wasn't the regular season. It was against a Reds team that finished below 500 that year. All I'm saying is he's got company on greatest game ever. But you're going to go over the numbers. I totally understand if people want to call it the greatest game ever played.
Greatest postseason game ever played. We give that to Shohei Ohtani, who went 6 scoreless innings with 10 Ks and hit 3 home runs in Game 4 of the National League Championship Series against the Milwaukee Brewers to send the Dodgers to the World Series, complete the sweep. That was a flawless performance from Shohei Ohtani. He walked 3. That's unacceptable, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But 10 Ks and 6 scoreless and 3 homers. We thought that was something you could only write in comic books, and he happened to bring a comic book to life in that game.
100%. I want to talk about the forgotten star of the Dodgers postseason run, Tyler Glasnow. Tyler Glasnow pitched to a 1.69 ERA over 21 1/3. He was used both as a starter and in relief. He started 3 games. Dodgers won all 3. He threw 1 2/3 of clutch scoreless relief against the Phillies in the division series. He recorded a save in Game 6 with no outs and runners on second and third base, gets a weak pop out on the first pitch, and then, of course, that double play to Kike Hernandez firing in the throw to Miguel Rojas, who made a great pick. And then he threw 2 1/3. He did give up 1 run in Game 7, but again, in relief after coming in from the bullpen in Game 6. Every single game he pitched in, the Dodgers won. And I think that's huge.
That is absolutely humongous. And you really didn't think it when you watched Tyler Glasnow throw this year. You were really thinking, oh, it's Snell. Oh, it's Yamamoto. Oh, it's Ohtani. Glasnow did feel like the clear-cut 4 in that rotation this go-around. But he threw very well each time he got the ball, maybe with the exception of Game 7 or Game 6, but it's okay.
No, Game 7. In Game 6, he shut the door. Game 7, he did give up 1 earned. But again, that was his 3rd appearance of the postseason so far. Remember, he already had a big-time start. And then he also, got the save. And then this, great performance by Glasnow.
Amazing performance by Tyler Glasnow. He was aided by shadows in his first couple of starts, but you know what? Shadows don't discriminate on the stat page. So Tyler Glasnow, a heck of a go for the Dodgers in their World Series run. I have a couple more moments. I'm sure you have a couple more performers for the Dodgers, so we're going to bleed that over into the next segment. We'll also talk about the Toronto Blue Jays and the biggest moments, best performers from their postseason run. That's all coming up on the Just Baseball Show. Just Baseball Show, Jack McMullen, Peter Apple. We're talking about the Dodgers and the best moments and the best performers in their World Series run. Again, they had their World Series parade on Monday after winning Game 7 over the Toronto Blue Jays on Saturday night. Couple more moments that I want to shout out. The biggest one that we haven't even acknowledged yet, and we're 10 minutes into the program, Miguel Rojas, with the Dodgers down to their final 2 outs in Game 7 of the World Series, shoots one into the Blue Jay bullpen. Miguel Rojas, the guy that everybody in their separate group text was clamoring for to get removed for a pinch hitter, whoever it may be. Could it have been Alex Call? I don't know. Are you asking Justin Dean to get a bunt down? I don't know. Miguel Rojas with a solo shot to tie Game 7 of the World Series. That was the Mario Chalmers shot. Mario Chalmers did not win the national championship for Kansas. He sent them to overtime against Memphis. And that was what Miguel Rojas did. He gave them a shot, and Will Smith delivered in the 11th. I wanted to kind of clump those two together, but Miguel Rojas, given the stakes, I thought was a bigger swing than Will Smith's in the 11th, even though that is an incredibly memorable and humongous swing in Dodger history as well.
2 monumental hits by 2 guys who are not the quote unquote superstars of the Dodgers. Clearly, Miguel Rojas only started the last 2 games, played some defense. In that Game 7, he recorded his first hit since October 1st. And then his second hit, that home run. And Will Smith sandwiched right in between quite possibly the greatest player of all time and Freddie Freeman, the future first ballot Hall of Famer, or at least a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
Will Smith, the forgotten star, I like to call him. And you've said this plenty of times, the most underrated player in baseball because he gets sandwiched in between the brightest stars of the Dodgers.
And it doesn't help. And to your point, it doesn't help that his name is Will Smith.
Exactly.
Like, it's just a very generic name.
Yes, it does. It kind of blends in. But do you have any more moments? Because I'm ready to talk some Blue Jays best performers.
Got one more moment. How can we not acknowledge Freddie Freeman's solo shot in the 18th inning in Game 3?
Yep.
90% of the world was asleep. I was in some sort of weird quasi-comatose state. My eyes were watching the game. I don't know if my mind was comprehending the game. And Freddie Freeman gave me this overwhelming sensation of, thank God this baseball game's over. I never thought I wanted a World Series game to be over until I got to the 18th inning of Game 3. Freddie Freeman, that was another humongous moment in this Dodger soundtrack of October.
But there was a loser. But it doesn't mean they played poorly. The Blue Jays lost in 7. And just over the entire postseason, the stardom of Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has arrived in full force. In the postseason, he hit .397, .494, slugged .795 with 8 home runs, tying Ohtani for the most home runs ever in a postseason, and 15 RBIs. Remember, he just played 18 games. His 29 hits is tied for Randy Arozarena with the second most hits ever in the playoffs. Struck out just 7 times, walked 20 times, with 6 of them being intentional. He was a force, both offensively and defensively, making a lot of key plays at first base for the Blue Jays. Pretty good start to his $500 million contract.
I would say so. And he factored into a moment, for me, it was Game 5 of the World Series. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., 2 pitches after Davis Schneider took the first pitch of the game from Blake Snell deep, Vladdy homers as well. And that moment of back-to-back homers in the front 3 pitches for Blake Snell, who was in a trance before Game 1 of the World Series, that was one of the defining moments for the Blue Jays for me. Everybody was saying, oh, Dodger victory, Dodger victory. After Game 3 and that 18th inning walk-off for Freeman, Dodger victory. And what do they do in Game 5 against one of the best lefties on the planet? Back-to-back homers in the first 3 pitches of the game. Vladdy had been unconscious all month long, and Davis Schneider, man, tip of the cap to you, dude.
Tip of the cap, and tip of the cap to a couple of other players. Addison Barger, You know, Ernie Clement, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but I wanted to position Addison Barger here for a reason. Because offensively, you could make the argument he was the second best player for the Blue Jays. Slash 367, 441, 583 with 3 home runs and 4 doubles in 17 games. And then in the World Series, Addison Barger took it to a completely different level, even out hitting his teammate Vladimir Guerrero Jr. In the World Series, Addison Barger hit 480, 536 OBP, 680 slug. His 243 WRC plus, which again is graded on a 100 is league average scale. So he was 143% better than a league average hitter. That 243 mark was the highest on the team. I know many people are going to remember him getting doubled off in game 6 to end that game. But I don't want that to be the story surrounding Addison Barger's postseason run, because we can't forget the reason he was on second was that incredibly clutch double that got stuffed under the wall. If it takes a centimeter difference of a bounce, that's an RBI, and maybe the Blue Jays do win the World Series. So Addison Barger, hats off to you. Don't make that only mistake be your remembrance of Barger in the postseason.
Yeah, Barger had a moment for me. It was his pinch hit grand slam in game 1. First guy to have a pinch hit grand slam in the history of the World Series. That was an unbelievable moment. But one for me, as I bring you back to the ALCS, Reliable got them here. George Springer with his go-ahead 3-run home run in game 7 of the ALCS was the swing of their October. Yep. I understand that the World Series is magnified and more people are watching the World Series than the ALCS, but can we not have like amnesia on the George Springer swing? That was one of the biggest swings that we've seen in recent postseason history. Given the stakes, given where they were, given who they were trying to come back against, that bullpen is awesome. George Springer delivered the biggest swing for Toronto this month, and it didn't come in the World Series. It came at the tail end of game 7 of the ALCS.
And how can we also not mention Ernie Clement, who at 411, 416, 562, he only struck out 5 times in 73 at-bats in the playoffs. It's a 6.5% rate, 30 hits in his postseason run. That is the most in MLB history. The Earn Dog came to play, and you can see all over social media, all 29 other teams are asking themselves, how do we get our own Ernie Clement? But there's only one Earn Dog, and he resides in Toronto.
You had opportunities, folks. You totally had opportunities to go get Ernie Clement. He was DFA'd twice. You had every opportunity. I have one more guy that I want to bring up in terms of postseason moments, and it's before the World Series. But again, credit to Ernie Clement, who set the MLB postseason record with 30 hits in a single postseason. Number 2, Randy Arozarena in 2020. Number 3, his teammate this year, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So it speaks to the level of high-octane offense that we saw from the top, middle, and bottom of the Blue Jay lineup. Again, one more Toronto takeaway for you before we get to the best of the wild card round coming up next on the Just Baseball Show. Just Baseball Show is recapping the best moments and the best performances of the 2025 MLB postseason. And we talked about the Dodgers, the best moments across their run. The Blue Jays, we pretty much covered all of the best moments across their run. But there's one guy that didn't make any new fans in Game 7 that I want to highlight for his efforts in the ALCS. Toronto looked a little dead at the beginning of the ALCS, so much so that going back after Game 2 of the ALCS against Seattle, I said, it smells like a Mariner sweep right now, doesn't it? You know who got them back in the conversation against the Seattle Mariners? The lightest hitting player in Major League Baseball this year. The $100 million contract that they traded for. Andres Gimenez had 2 massive home runs in the ALCS, and everybody's going to forget, I promise. But when you're watching a Blue Jay game or you're listening to a Blue Jay game next year and the opposing broadcaster says, he had 2 massive homers in the ALCS, don't forget how massive those were.
Yeah, 100%. You want to talk about best of the wild card series?
Let's talk about best of the wild card, because this was a fun wild card series. It's funny, when I was looking back and I was trying to find like the biggest moments, I wasn't necessarily finding like these big bats. I wasn't finding that big homer at any point. I just happened to find dogs on the hill. Was that kind of your homework and what you came away with?
100%. And I think the dog was Cam Schlittler. If we're just talking about the wild card series, the rookie went 8 innings, 5 hits, no earned, no walks, 12 punch outs, sends the Yankees to the next round against the Red Sox. And I remember recording that episode right after that start was finalized, and both of us were trying to brainstorm better performances that we have seen. Of course, you could talk about Shohei when he's pitching and hitting, but if we're just talking about rookie performances, Trey Savage had a few, but this one was the best of the playoffs. In that spot against the Red Sox, we saw all the viral moments of him versus the fans and people coming after him. He cemented his name in Yankee lore.
It's funny because you need to recalibrate like every 2-3 days when you get into the postseason, because we watched the Cam Schlittler start and we were saying that might be the best rookie postseason start we've ever seen. And then 2 days later, 3 days later, Trey Savage goes 5 1/3, 5 2/3, no hit with 11 Ks against the Yankees. So I understand that we have to recalibrate, but Schlittler, given the stakes in a winner take all when they had already lost game 1, they became the first team of the new format to win a series after losing game 1 in the wild card round. And that was such a fun game 3 because game 1 was Fried and Crochet shoved. Fried shoved until he didn't. And then you get to game 3 and it's Cam Schlittler and Connolly early. If you told me that that was going to happen in Red Sox Yankees in the wild card round before the season began, or even in late April, I think everybody would be sitting here saying, what went horribly wrong? A little bit went wrong for the Red Sox and the Yankees in terms of rotational health this year, but those guys kind of earned that opportunity, and Schlittler ran through the tape. Early through decently well. Schlittler was out of his mind awesome. And game 3 of Red Sox Yankees was one of my moments.
And you're talking about it being completely surprising, and I couldn't agree with you more. But the next guy that I want to highlight, I think he did exactly what we thought he was going to do. Tarik Skubal in game 1 against the Guardians in the wild card series against his division rival. His team only put up 2 runs in that game. He had to allow 0 or 1 earned in order to win this ball game. And what does he do? 7 2/3, 3 hits, 1 earned, 14 punch outs. And his team wins a pivotal game 1, propelling them to get past the Cleveland Guardians. And we have to remember, let's rewind the tape a little bit. The Tigers had collapsed towards the end of the season, and the Guardians were on an incredible surge, the complete opposite of what happened in 2024. And a lot of people picked the Guardians to move past. And Tarik Skubal put his hand up and said, not on my watch, and delivered an incredible performance to push the Tigers past. Of course, they had to win another one, but you win game 1 of the wild card series, you're probably going to keep going, except the Red Sox, which
again, everybody except the Red Sox continues to go.
I guess doesn't need to be said, but there's
good for you.
Why am I bragging? We lost in the next round anyway.
That was one of my moments. I also wanted to highlight the guy on the other side, because game 1 of that was the first game of the postseason that we had. It was Skubal, Gavin Williams. It was a weekday day game. Nobody really feels like that is overwhelmingly fun and sexy. But Skubal, to your point, the line on him, 7 2/3, a 1-run ball with 14 punch-outs. Gavin Williams, 6 innings, 2 unearned runs, 8 Ks. So these guys combined for 13 2/3 and punched out 22 guys. That felt like an ace-off when we were watching it, and that was one of my moments. We've got about 30 seconds here. I'm just going to give you quickly my last moment of the wild card round. It was Crochet. We already hinted on that a little bit, but Garrett Crochet showing up the way he did, setting down, I think, 14 consecutive guys at one point. Crochet 7 2/3, a 1-run ball with 11 punch-outs against the Yankees in the Bronx in game 1. That was just incredible. We're going to move on to the DS in a moment on the Just Baseball Show. Just Baseball Show, as always, is presented by BetMGM. Jack McMullen and Peter Apple. Let's talk about the division series right now, because this was a really fun one. We had the back and forth nature of Cubs Brewers. We had the back and forth nature of Tigers Mariners. There were so many good series here.
So many. And we're going to start with, I think, the best offensive performance of the division series, even though his team got knocked out. Aaron Judge, got to tip your cap to the man. 9 for 15 in this series. 2 doubles. A monumental home run against the Blue Jays. Struck out 3 times to walking 4. His 340 WRC plus. Let that sink in for a second. A 340. Remember, league average is 100. Led all players in the division series. Now, again, we wanted to highlight kind of the losing teams. If we want to talk about the Blue Jays, we'd be talking about the Blue Jays for the entire episode. But I do want to mention that both Vladdy, Ernie Clement, and Dalton Varsho were the only other players in the division series with at least a 300 WRC plus. But at the top of the list by WRC plus is Aaron freaking Judge.
Aaron Judge, that homer, if it's fair, it's his moment. That call from Joe Davis at that time was just utterly insane. So I can appreciate the Judge moment in the DS wholeheartedly. I didn't have anything from the Yankees in particular in that DS because that was like the only good thing going for them.
You don't think they played well?
No, unfortunately, I don't.
Me neither.
In terms of moments, the Brewers setting the tone the way they did. Do you remember that 6-run first inning for Milwaukee?
Of course. How could you not?
That was incredible. The 6-run first inning, and then the long ball coming to play in Game 5 against the Cubs. After that 6-run first, I think everybody was thinking that the Brewers were going to be this battering ram. And they totally were at points over the course of the DS, but the Cubs just hung around, and they got wins. In Game 5, Andrew Vaughn showing up with a huge homer. Turang showing up with a huge homer. The power display. There were moments in that DS, but for me, it was that 6-run first in Game 1 of the NLDS against the Cubs that set the tone for Milwaukee. And I think it had all of us thinking, oh, this is going to be no contest. The Brewers they can walk backwards into the CS.
And then the Cubs, of course, put up a battle, but Milwaukee eventually got past them. And to highlight 2 players for Milwaukee in that division series, you already mentioned Andrew Vaughn, who slashed 286, 412, 714. He put up the 5th best OPS in the division series, not on just the Brewers, throughout the division series among all teams. He hit 2 home runs, and I think a pretty damn cool thing, didn't strike out once. But you also were led by your superstar. I was going to say the word future superstar, but he's kind of already here. Jackson Chourio. Slash 389, 421, 667. He hit a home run. He hit 2 doubles and put up 6 RBIs while, we can't forget, playing on 1 hamstring. George Springer, Bo Bichette, they were 2 guys who we knew had injuries the whole time. There were plenty of injuries throughout baseball, throughout the playoffs, that guys were playing through, and Jackson Chourio was one of them. And to hit 389 in that series against a division rival, he just continues to prove that he's built for the big moments.
Yes. My other take from this DS round, I had 2, actually. One was disappointing, and we're going to save that for the tail end of the show. I do have one disappointing moment that I want to give you. I know you have disappointing performers of the postseason, but the exhilaration factor of Game 5 of the ALDS in Seattle was close to unmatched. It was a winner-take-all game. Imagine Game 3 of the World Series being winner-take-all, and it kind of happened in Seattle. And Seattle had this World Series or bust thing. You know, Cal Raleigh might as well go win the whole thing. That lasting 15 innings and ending on that Jorge Polanco walk-off single, that was so much fun. I was on a flight from innings 3 through 11, and then I landed and I listened to 12 through 15. And neither side really wanted to win the baseball game. I mean, it was double play city in extra innings. There were so many ugly parts of Game 5. And that is why it was one of the best moments, because it was just beauty and horror of baseball all wrapped into one. Game 7 of the CS had to be tough. Game 7 of the World Series had to be tough. But for a Mariners fan base, and thank goodness they won, For a Mariners fan base that had to suffer through 15 innings of the DS, I couldn't imagine what they were going through.
Just an emotional roller coaster. It's how do you sleep after that? How do you go to work the next day after that? Because your mind is in a frenzy, and I'm sure all the players shared similar sentiments. I want to talk about a team also that we haven't really even mentioned yet. But when these two teams are playing each other, the Dodgers and the Phillies, we said that the winner of this series is probably going to win the World Series. And the team that lost was the Phillies, and they're often the forgotten team of this playoffs. But they got two excellent performances, even though, of course, they did lose to the Dodgers. JT Realmuto, catcher, hit .353, slugged .765 in 4 games, hit a homer, hit a triple, and put up 2 doubles. He's getting up there in age. The regular season numbers, probably not his best, but when the moment mattered, he came to play. Also on the mound, Christopher Sanchez.
Yes.
Just continues to prove why he's one of the best pitchers in baseball. Remember, he faced these LA Dodgers, going 12 innings over 2 starts, a 2.25 ERA, and a 13-3 strikeout to walk ratio. So while the Phillies fell, those two guys stepped up, and you did lose to the eventual World Series champion Dodgers. So it is a loss. Were you a DS losing type of team this year? I don't think so.
No, we had that conversation in real time. The winner of that series was probably going to get to the World Series or win the World Series. I don't think we expected Toronto to show up the way they did.
Yeah.
So in the moment, we were saying whoever wins this is going to win the whole darn thing. And it happened to be the case. The Dodgers won that. And to your point, the only blowout in that series was the 8-1 Philly win in Game 3. Teoscar Hernandez, I know we didn't mention him in the Dodger performances, but Teoscar Hernandez had 2 legit performances over that series in the DS that effectively won the Dodgers, that NLDS against the Phillies.
I also want to talk about one other performance that I don't know if it was my favorite, but what I will say when I remember the 2025 playoffs, I'm going to remember Jacob Misiorowski. 7 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned, 7 punch-outs, and 2 walks in relief. He was a guy where if he's on, we all said he could be a weapon. But to end the regular season, it wasn't great. And how do you respond in a postseason environment? And we saw exactly what it looked like. 103 miles an hour, 104 miles an hour, 95-mile-an-hour sliders. One of the best talents that we saw throughout the postseason was Jacob Misiorowski.
When he came on throwing 103 and 104, like at the outset of his first appearance against the Cubs, I was stunned. I was like, oh, okay. We were so excited about the whole Roki bullpen thing, the Misiorowski bullpen thing. And I know like plenty of Brewers fans have been excited and almost like kind of dreading that move to the bullpen for Misiorowski because they know he would tick up. But that also means they don't get that in a starting capacity and they don't know when to buy their tickets. He's going to be a starting pitcher next year. There's no doubt about it. But in that moment, it made all the sense in the world for Pat Murphy to deploy Misiorowski the way he did. That was so cool. Like there wasn't a particular moment, but the Brewer bullpen usage across that 5-game DS was a lot of fun to watch. The CS, it was nauseating because it was just Aaron Ashby every time. Like it was slamming the button Ashby. It's like John Schneider slamming the Mason Fluharty button. It's like time for Mason Fluharty. That's kind of what Ashby turned into, but the mixing and matching of the bullpen in Game 5 and the opener into Priester in the DS, I thought it was fun to watch Pat Murphy kind of go to work in that one.
And speaking about how good the Brewers pitching was, because it undoubtedly was, there was one great Cubs performer. Nico Horner went 9 for 20 with a home run, hit .450, slugged .600, put up a .208 WRC plus. So against all that great pitching, Nico Horner delivered.
Nico definitely did deliver. Those are the standout performers in the big moments of the DS. We're going to talk about the CS in a moment. Also the disappointment. The Just Baseball show continues next wherever you're listening on your podcast, whether it's Spotify, Apple Pods, YouTube, or with our friends at Sports Grid. Be back in a moment. All right, we just highlighted the performers of the wild card series of the DS. We already covered the Dodgers and the Blue Jays. What do you have in terms of the ALCS and the NLCS for us?
Yes, so I wanted to focus on the two teams that lost because still getting to this moment, you deserve a ton of praise. And we've already talked about great performers by the Dodgers and great performers by the Blue Jays. But I want to talk about Josh Naylor for a second and the Seattle Mariners. Josh Naylor was the best hitter on the Mariners in the playoffs. And we got to remember, he was traded for at the deadline, and at the time wasn't even the biggest deadline acquisition because, of course, they also traded for Eugenio Suarez, who hit about 35, 40 home runs before he was traded. Josh Naylor in the ALCS against those Blue Jays slash 417, 481, 792. He hit 3 home runs in 7 games. And if you go to any Mariners social media page, might we recommend the Marine Layer Pod, the best Mariners podcast in the world on the Just Baseball Network. Every single person who has ever even been to the Seattle airport wants Josh Naylor back in a Mariners uniform, as of course he's a free agent this offseason, but also other great performances by Seattle's bats. Cal Raleigh hit 4 home runs in 7 games, put up a 189 WRC plus. Julio Rodriguez, 3 home runs, put up a 180 WRC plus. And Gino Suarez, 2 home runs, hit over 300, a 177 WRC plus. So the stars for Seattle in the middle certainly showed up, even though, of course, fans and the players alike got their hearts ripped out.
Yes.
To end
Julio had some moments. Naylor had some moments, surely. Jorge Polanco had some moments. But the moment for me that gave me such a strong sense of confidence in the Seattle Mariners, after the 15-inning Game 5 in the ALDS, they needed a warm body on the mound to just cover some innings. I feel like we were looking at that as a near hangover type outing. Whoever got it was just going to have to eat it, and they were going to effectively start that series in Game 2. Not the case. Seattle wins Game 1 because Bryce Miller went 6 innings of 2-hit, 1-run baseball. That moment for me, that particular start for Bryce Miller, told me everything I need to know about that guy, that he's ready to answer the bell in the biggest game Seattle has played in quite a while. And obviously you can make the argument that Game 5 of the DS is bigger than Game 1 of the CS, but Game 1 of the CS just felt like a different magnitude for the Mariners. And Bryce Miller matched that moment when they had some other starting pitchers over the course of that series that really didn't match the moment. So shout out Bryce Miller.
And I'm really glad that you framed it the way that you did, because Game 1 was huge. Like, it's easy to say now, Monday morning quarterbacking, that Bryce Miller pitched well. But if we remember, if we rewind our brains, this was the start they're supposed to lose. This ain't Kirby. This ain't Gilbert. This ain't Castillo. This ain't Brian Wu. This is their 5. Going into it, ERA wasn't great. Performance against Toronto in the past was so-so. What is he going to do? And he comes up and delivers. In the CS, 10 innings, a 1.80 ERA. And now when we look back and have the ability to have hindsight on the series, who are the pitchers throughout the playoffs that were able to quiet Toronto? Because Blake Snell ran into a little bit of trouble. Tyler Glasnow had some good starts, but I wouldn't say he quieted them. It was Yamamoto and it was Bryce Miller. Look at George Kirby's outings. Look at Logan Gilbert's outings. Not exactly great. That's the reason they ended up losing. Of course, there's plenty of reasons, but they certainly didn't help. Logan Gilbert, the ace of the staff, both of his starts against Toronto were not great. But
Yep.
Bryce Miller, every single time he pitched against Toronto, shut the door. Huge.
Yeah, massive. I really don't have anything else from the ALCS. I mean, Julio's first inning homer against Trey Savage in Game 2, that was a 3-run shot. That was my other moment from the ALCS. And I hate to be this guy. Did you pluck anything from the Brewers in the NLCS?
I did. Okay. Kind of. But I did. So Caleb Durbin showed up for Milwaukee. That's one thing that we can say in that series. He hit over 300, had a triple and 2 doubles, and stole 2 bases in 4 games. And we have to remember, watching that series, a lot of people said Dodgers in 5, Dodgers in 4. Dodgers in 6 because I want to be nice.
Yeah.
Because of how unbelievable those starting pitching performances were. You're going up against Yamamoto, Snell, Ohtani, and Glasnow pitching at the peak of their powers. And who stepped up? The man they traded for Devin Williams. And he wasn't even the biggest name in that deal because Nestor Cortez Jr. was also included.
Who hardly pitched for them this year.
If you're looking for postseason performances in that series, there's not a lot of them. But Caleb Durbin certainly deserves our praise. I also want to talk about some pitching performances because it's not like the Dodgers put up 9 runs every single game.
No.
A lot of them came in the bullpen. We already talked about Mizorowski, who struck out 9 in 5 innings, was diabolical again against the Dodgers. But Quinn Priester and Jared Koenig, the 3 of them combined to throw 13 innings, strike out 16, and only allow 1 earned run against the Dodgers. Incredibly impressive. And I also keep asking myself, why was the Aaron Ashby button pressed so aggressively when you had the Jared Koenig button also there? I would have liked to see a little bit more from him, even though he still gave them 4 innings of great pitching on the mound. But it is what it is. And even if you kind of switch those buttons, who knows? Because the Dodgers were the Dodgers, and it's hard to beat them no matter what button you press.
I'm not spoiling the disappointment segment that we're going to get to in about 90 seconds. Because it wasn't a disappointment. Like, I entirely understand what happened. It was human reflex. But one of the biggest moments for me in that series was Terang getting out of the way of the hit by pitch.
I know it's so tough because it's almost like Kike. Do you remember in one of the final innings of Game 7 of the World Series, he could have leaned into a baseball too. It's such a reaction thing.
It's such reaction. And again, I don't blame Terang at all.
I know, but we can mention it because if he gets hit, maybe we're singing a different tune here. I'm sure if you asked Bryce Terang, he would have said, I absolutely would have taken 100 miles an hour to the face if I had the option to. It was a complete reaction, so it's hard to harp on it, but it is worth mentioning.
It was worth mentioning. That was really like the moment for me. But again, that kind of leans into a Roki moment in a certain sense. It also leans into the volatility of Blake Trinan. I just no, I'm good. But yeah, those were kind of the things that jumped out to me in terms of the CS. We got about 30 seconds left on the CS segment. Anything else you got here?
Not really. I guess I do want to say the Brewers were disappointing. I mean, the Brewers were the 1 seed.
Yeah.
This was a team who beat the Cubs, put up an amazing regular season, and just fell completely short.
More disappointments in a moment. That'll take us to the tape on the Just Baseball show. Stay here right with us on Sports Grid. Sorry to send you into your night and afternoon and day with a frowny face, but we are going to wrap. Yeah, it depends.
It depends because there's been a lot of people hate watching these playoffs. So this might be their favorite segment. So it's either going to be your least or favorite segment, which is good.
Totally be.
It's good for clicks. Right?
It is. It's really good for clicks. My first one, let's just get this out of the way. Feel terrible for Orion Kerkering, but that was the brutal moment of the postseason in the month of October. Orion Kerkering in the bottom of the 11th when he had out number 3 at first base, decides to fire home, sends it to the backstop, and the Dodgers end up winning the NLDS on that play. Orion Kerkering with his throwing error home.
That one, hearing it again.
His name makes you sad right now, and I feel terrible for him, but he handled it like a pro. I'm not sure if you guys saw his post-game media availability, but he was such a professional about all of it.
Yeah, he was. Some other bad performances, and this wasn't just one play. This was their entire postseason run. Manny Machado, where are you at? 1 for 12?
How do I assess the season? We lost.
Fernando Tatis Jr., where are you at? 1 for 13? Or 1 for 12, technically. He had 13 plate appearances. He did walk. That's not going to help. If you think about the Padres, all they needed, Jack, get a couple of runs to put in the super bullpen. The super bullpen performed. Even the starting pitchers weren't too bad.
No.
They didn't hit. The guys in the middle of the lineup, the guys who you pay buku bucks to show up in these moments, Fernando Tatis Jr. going into this playoffs was one of the most feared hitters going into the postseason. Laid an egg. Manny Machado, they need you. He had one big home run. I was there. I was at Wrigley for that home run. That was his only hit. Manny Machado, double plays galore. Fernando Tatis Jr., I know they pitched around you. You had one walk, though. A lot of chasing outside the zone, Tatis. A lot of swings and misses inside the zone. Those two players got to look themselves in the mirror and be like, we're a big reason we lost in the playoffs. Yep. I'm sorry to say, but it's the truth.
Yeah. Are you along those similar lines of thinking with a Bryce Harper?
Hard to say no. And I did say, and you wanted me kicked off the show. I came on here and I said, I'm not afraid of Bryce Harper as much as I have been in previous postseason series. He did not put up a great regular season. The at-bats to end the season were not good. He's at an age where I don't think he could just flip it on its head. And he came up short. Now, let's say he does have a good postseason. Does that mean they beat the Dodgers? Maybe not. Would it have helped?
It would.
Is it possible that they could have? Yes. And what does Bryce Harper do? Not much. But it also wasn't just him. I mean, if we're looking at some other postseason performers, Nick Castellanos hit 133.
Yeah.
Bryson Stott hit 154. Bryce Harper did hit 200. Kyle Schwarber had a couple of home runs, but hit 188. Trey Turner hit 235. It wasn't just him, and you can't put the Phillies' loss on him.
No.
But the answer is, was he disappointing? 100% yes.
Yeah. A certain pitcher jumps out to me, and we've got just over 2 minutes here on this segment to wrap us up. I thought the most disappointing pitcher of the postseason was Logan Gilbert. I was expecting vintage from Gilbert, and we unfortunately just didn't get it at any point in the CS. And I don't know, man. Gilbert just left me wanting more each time he got the baseball.
This wasn't CS. This was going back to the DS, but another pitcher on my team, Carlos Rodon, did not show up.
Yeah.
8 innings over 2 starts. Pitched to a 9.72 ERA. That's the guy who you paid a pretty penny to bring in. And he's been a little bit inconsistent, but this regular season turned out quite possibly his best season as a Yankee. And then what happens in October? Nothing. 9.72, going about 3 or 4 innings in each start. That's not a number 2 in the rotation. And Rodon really struggled here.
I have one more name, and he was on the team that won the World Series. But if Blake Trinan still has believers in LA right now, I don't really understand that. Every single time he struggled.
That is just, do you trust the Dodgers to figure it out? I kind of
no. I mean, he signed a 1-year deal. I'd be stunned if he was back in Dodger blue.
That's a good point. He did sign a 1-year deal. He's not going to return. But I'm saying, let's say he was on a 2-year deal. They're such a good organization that I would give them the benefit of the doubt and still think Trident's going to be good next year. But he's not. So we'll see.
They're going to optimize that pen. We've got about 30 seconds. You got somebody else, or are we good?
I think we're good. Those were the most disappointing players, at least in my opinion.
Got you. Thank you guys so much. Our Discord is one of the best baseball communities you could possibly have. And during hot stove season, that thing will be alive. Atlanta just hires a new manager, and Walt Weiss, we're talking about it in the Discord. It is amazing. Again, it's less than a price of a sandwich to join us. Any link you need is in the episode description. For Peter Apple, I'm Jack McMullen. We're talking baseball with you all off season long. Thank you so much for joining us on Spotify, on Apple Pods, on YouTube, and right here on Sports Grid.